Hello, hello. I think we can get started.
Yeah.
Because people are joining, more and more people here with us today. Yaroslava, over to you, so you can start.
Добрий день, шановні освітяни, учителі англійської мови. Раді вітати вас. Центр професійного розвитку педагогічних працівників міста Києва та компанія Пірсон дякує кожному та кожній з вас, адже знаємо, що сьогодні ви продовжуєте працювати, наскільки це можливо. Дякуємо за те, що всупереч найскладнішим обставинам ви повертаєте життя учнів до звичного режиму, обов'язковою складовою якого є навчання. Для підтримки навчання ми підготували для вас серію навчально-методичних заходів, після яких кожен учасник отримає сертифікат, що засвідчує підвищення кваліфікації, а також доступ до безкоштовних онлайн-ресурсів для вчителів, які працюють в 5-11 класах та їх учнів. Dear colleagues, never stop learning, never stop growing. You know that success comes from continuous lifelong learning. The world changes constantly. There will always be new skills to learn and techniques for us to adopt. Kyiv Professional Development Center for Educators and Pірсон want to support you in the best possible way we can. And today, introduce the first webinar from the series of events for teachers to improve teaching skills in affordable and flexible way. Alona, Elizabeth, and Agnieszka, glad to cooperate with you.
Ну, зараз я вже, може, скажу декілька слів. Добрий день. Мене звати Альона Зарахович, я представник Пірсон в Україні. І хочу привітати всіх, хто доєднався до нашого вебінару сьогодні. Я бачу тут і Чернівці, Львів, Івано-Франківська, Одеса, Мелітополь, багато Києва. Не всі написали, звідки ви, але я всіх вітаю, дуже-дуже рада, що ви змогли доєднатися. Цюріх там бачила, тобто з-за кордону теж до нас приєднуються. Це дуже-дуже добре. У ці часи кожен українець, кожна небайдужа людина намагається щось зробити для країни, для людей. І вчителі, як вже сказала Ярослава, які, незважаючи на війну, розпочали навчання, допомагають не тільки тут і зараз, а і ви додаєте свій внесок в майбутнє, щасливе майбутнє нашої країни і наших дітей. Тож дякуємо вам. Ще у березні компанія Пірсон офіційно оголосила про свою підтримку України, і ми запропонували учителям і учням безкоштовно користуватися нашими електронними підручниками. Це підручники для середньої школи Wider World і для старшої Focus. Підручники надаються у вигляді кодів на платформу, нашу інтерактивну платформу Пірсон. Ми вже надали більш ніж 7 тисяч кодів для учнів, тож учні отримали змогу навчатися онлайн за найкращими підручниками вивчати англійську. І я зараз не можу просто про це не сказати, бо один з авторів підручників, Focus, Вон Джонс, він приїжджав з презентацією в Україну, може хтось був у нього на презентаціях. І ось зараз він живе у невеличкому містечку в Великій Британії, він активний волонтер, всім серцем співчуває Україні, він збирає одяг, збирає продукти, збирає гроші. І вчора він привіз багато, власноручно, може, я не знаю, як так сказати, але привіз багато вантажівку гуманітарної допомоги до польсько-українського кордону. І зараз він у Польщі намагається передати цей свій груз і одночасно допомагає у Польщі тим, хто є там біженцям з України. Ось такий у нас автор з великим серцем, який написав чудовий підручник Focus. Я хочу, щоб ті, хто працюють, вони пишалися ще і цим. Між тим, пропозиція щодо кодів, вона ще дійсна. І якщо ви не замовляли ще коди для вас і ваших учнів, ви можете це зробити. Для цього просто ви можете зайти на нашу сторінку Пірсон Ukraine у Фейсбуці і там подивитися, як замовляти коди. Тож, підписуйтесь на нашу сторінку, щоб знати всі новини, щоб знати, що ми пропонуємо і що відбувається. І ось нещодавно Центр професійної підготовки з Києва, Ярослава, представник цього центру, звернувся до нас з пропозицією організувати навчання для вчителів за темою «Як навчати онлайн учнів». Ми зустрілися, обговорили все і зараз пропонуємо вам низку вебінарів. На цьому тижні у нас буде 2 вебінари. Один сьогодні зліз і ще у четвер, але я хочу просто теж наголосити, що в четвер ми будемо проводити вебінар, я буду українською проводити для тих, хто ще ніколи не користувався нашими електронними ресурсами. І я просто покажу, який функціонал є у інтерактивного підручника Active Book, у інтерактивного зошита My English Lab, як зареєструватися на платформу, де знайти відповіді на питання для тих, хто почав роботу чи тільки починає працювати з електронними підручниками. Тобто це і буду відповідати на ваше питання. Так, щоб ви розуміли, що чекати у четвер. А зараз я хочу надати декілька слів моїй колезі, яка піклується, щоб найкращі пропозиції надавалися Україні. My colleague from the central office, Пірсон Ukraine, Agnieszka Hybel. Agnieszka, over to you, please.
Hello, my Ukrainian is getting better and better when I listen to the ladies. The story that Aliona told you about Von Jones, our author, whom I had the pleasure to meet yesterday when he arrived in Krakow to do the volunteering work. And today I heard from him that he is actually in Lviv because he went to bring some humanitarian aid to Lviv. So don't be surprised if you go out in the street and you meet the guy. He's very, tall, and those of you who have met him in our trainings will definitely recognize him. So look around, maybe you will find you will meet the Pірson author in the street in Lviv. For those of you who are in Lviv, we have a truly international group here. Aliona mentioned several Ukrainian cities that you are from. I saw some people from London. Today with us is Elizabeth Beer, our teacher trainer, specializing in teaching teens and very, very willing to share her experience, knowledge, and practical ideas about teaching online. And this is what's going to happen for the next 50 or so minutes. So Elizabeth has been teaching in different countries, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Spain. Now she's in Madrid. And recently she has been involved in Pірson Live classes, running online classes internationally for teachers and students around the world. So over to you, Liz, and enjoy the session. We will be trying to answer the questions if they appear in the chat as we go. If there is some big question, you can put it in the question and answer box because it will be easier for us to follow and find. So over to Liz.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the bad pronunciation about to come, but Dobry вечір, Moise Ukrainian. And with that, I'm going to share my screen now and begin with our presentation for today. And what a lovely language that you have. When I was listening to Yaroslava and Aliona, I was quite willing to sit there for an hour and listen to what they had to say because their voices are absolutely so lovely. So it's wonderful to have you here with me today, and professionally speaking, it's an absolute honor to be talking to the teachers today from Ukraine. We absolutely stand with you, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. We're going to cover the basics of teaching hybrid and online classes, but mostly online classes today, but I will include a little slide if you are still teaching hybrid. It is absolutely the beginner's guide to doing this. Now, I know that you've been teaching during the coronavirus, but perhaps you've been using physical course books and trying to use physical course books with your students through the camera. And now we're going to look at the digital course books, how you and your students, when you'll have your own copy of the digital course book, how we can manage those classes well and still be very, very interactive. So in today's session, we've got a lot to cover, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at how to set some good aims when we're teaching. Remember, the basics of our teaching is a good lesson always comes from a good aim. I'm going to talk you through the idea of flipped learning. If you haven't heard of this concept before, I am going to talk you through it and how it might be beneficial to you as a teacher. Then we'll go to the practicalities. I'm going to show you a digital course book. I'm going to look at focus today. I'll share my screen with you and just take you through the benefits, the big things that we can do as teachers with our digital book. Then we're going to look at how we can still engage our students at the beginning of our class, get them excited to be there, how we can manage our speaking activities, and how we can show other ways that we understand in a class rather than through speaking or talking over one another. Then, of course, we still need to be assessing our students. How are they doing? What areas do they need improvement on? How can we do that with digital course books and through online? Then I'll show you those top tips for hybrid teaching if you're still hybrid teaching. And then I am going to talk you through some of my useful websites. However, I do want to say that good online teaching doesn't rely on lots and lots and lots of websites to keep the children entertained and learning. It really does come from you setting clear aims that the students can achieve and helping them with that. So with that being said, let's move on. If you have any questions as we go along, you're very welcome to put them in the chat box. If I can, I will respond. If not, there'll be time at the end for me to answer any questions. Also, this is a collaborative session, so if you think of an idea, if you want to share something with your colleagues that you do with your classes, put them in the chat box. It's wonderful when we share resources. I don't have all the answers, so I always learn from whatever webinar I attend or I give, so please put your ideas there. So let's move on to that first idea then, setting an aim, okay? We must bear in mind that even though we are teaching online, the content is much slower to get through. We know that when we're in a room with our students, our eyes help us very quickly to see if a student has their book open, if they're ready, if they're on the right page, okay? When we're doing this online, it's a lot harder. So because we know that teaching is a bit slower and the content is a bit slower, we need to prioritize what we're going to teach our students this year. My rule of thumb to start with is a third. If you remember back to your face-to-face classes and the amount of work you used to get through, bring it down to a third. That is pretty much what you're going to achieve with your students well, so that they understand. As they get used to dealing with their digital course book, to flick between watching you and doing an activity in their book, you can then push up that planning level. But do prioritize. It doesn't matter if you miss things out of your book. I'm telling you this now. You don't have to cover absolutely everything. You know that when you have a new class and you have a new course book, you often have some chapters at the beginning that kind of reviews what was done in the previous course book and the previous level, yeah? So it's okay if you want to miss things out. Very often the next course book does actually deal with it, okay? So think about your students. What do they need? Do they need a lot of speaking? If so, prioritize those speaking and vocabulary units. Do they need a lot of grammar help? Do they need a lot of support? Prioritize that instead. I like to do an aim. When I write my aims, I usually use this phrase when I'm writing it down on my piece of paper because I'm still a little bit old-fashioned. And I always use the all, most, and some. So for example, I'll say, by the end of the class, all my students will be able to achieve this. This is a good lesson if all my students can do this. Most of my students will be able to do this as well, but there might be one or two who struggle, but that's okay, because I know I can give them support. And some of my students who are very, very quick to get things and love English and push it forward, some of my students might be able to do one more thing. So I plan using the all, the most, and the some. And I'm going to give you an example of this now. Here's a screenshot of the focus book. It's a vocabulary unit, and we've got some professions on the left. And we've also got some adjective phrases that they've got to learn on the right. As you can see in activity 6, we've got, she has a badly paid job, a part-time job, she works long hours, these kind of phrases. So if I'm going to do my planning, for me, my plan is all of my students will be able to pronounce the job vocabulary. You know, as a teacher, I think my students are quite capable of maybe doing this before class, matching the words to the pictures or finding out with a dictionary what they mean, but can they pronounce it? Probably not. That's where I'm going to come in as a teacher. My main aim will be all my students are going to be able to pronounce this vocabulary super well. So we have lots of activities to help us there. Most of my students will be able to understand and then use those new phrases, badly paid job, works long hours. And then some of my students will be able to take those phrases and personalize it and maybe talk about their friends and family members using those phrases. So that's my planning there. And sometimes that really helps you to focus on the priorities. What do you need to work on so that your students can reach the goal? So that's the way I like to plan. Number 4 here, check the entire unit. You know, sometimes some nice relevant content comes a couple of pages after what you're looking at. So whenever I get to a new chapter in my course book, I actually sit down and read the whole thing. And then I go, okay, yeah, so I actually am going to take a couple of activities from page 12, but then we're going to jump to page 16 and consolidate our learning. I'm going to show you an example of this here. So if you remember here in our vocabulary page, we've got these phrases, badly paid job, part-time work, works with their hands, works with children. This is on page 37. And if we jump ahead a few pages to a little reading, can you see there, exam focus, activity 3, I've magnified it for you there. Who says her job is well paid? Who works with their hands, who works outdoors. So there's that consolidation there. Now you might want to say, okay, I want my students to have a bit of time before they see that vocabulary again to see if they've really remembered it. No problem, you can do that. But you can also jump and use this activity later on in the book to consolidate what they've learned. So feel free to mix and match activities to suit you. Number 5, avoid lengthy teacher talk time. Apologies, this is a webinar, so there is going to be lengthy teacher talk time from me. But in a classroom, we should be putting our voices down to the minimum. By that, I mean we should be greeting our students, setting instructions, and then kind of helping our students if they need it. And that's about it, really. If we can get our students to explain things, to work together, to do things, this is far more engaging than them sitting there listening to you give a grammar explanation for about 10 minutes, okay? If you can set activities that students can do it by themselves, this is really, really great. Also, sort of studies have shown that students tend to be ever so focused for about 6 minutes. Not just students, everybody. Everybody is very focused for about 6 minutes, and then their mind tends to wander off to, oh, I've got that other assignment I have to do for that teacher. And it's human nature, your mind does wander. If things are nicely segmented into short 6 minutes, then it will be nice and easy for your students to follow. So do bring your voice down and think about ways that your students can talk more. Now I'm going to go on to this concept that I talked about at the beginning called flipped learning. If you've seen this concept already, you can be thinking, okay, how can I use this now that I'm teaching online? And if you haven't heard of this concept, it's a concept that came out about 15, maximum 20 years ago. And it's the idea that in class time, we should not as teachers be explaining or doing something that students can technically do by themselves in their free time and without pressure. And instead, class time is given to the practice of that language. Now that could be in a speaking interaction, that could be gap fills or vocab activities, but it's practicing that language and that you're there to clear up any doubts. if students have to understand a concept, like a grammar explanation, I mean, really, this can be done by themselves before class starts as a homework, so that when they come to class, they're actually having a go and spending real quality time with you, trying to clear up doubts, trying to use it well, work on their pronunciation and personalization. Another example of this would be, for example, reading. How many times have we sat in a class and waited for someone to finish the reading, but we've already read it, so what do? Do we twiddle our thumbs? Do we do a fast finisher worksheet? Well, this kind of thing can be done for homework as well. But of course, you need to have expectations for your teens, because your teens might say, yeah, I'll do that. And they don't. So you might need to just plan a little something in a lesson to help those students who haven't done the homework. Or you might say, okay, you have to do this. Otherwise, what we're going to do in class is not going to make sense. And you're not going to be able to join in on the activities we're all going to do. I'm going to have to give you something a lot more boring that you're going to do on your own. So giving them some consequences there is good. If it's something like grammar and you want your students to identify and understand grammar before a class, the focus course books have a grammar video embedded for you already. And students can click on their digital course books and watch that, and watch it again and watch it again until they feel like they've got it. And that's really nice, because the autonomy is with them. And there's a little screenshot I've got down here of this guy. The focus video starts with a little animation to put that grammar in context, little story. And then this man starts to introduce, okay, what is it? How does it look? How do you form it? But if you're not teaching with focus, if you're teaching with Wider World, for example, well, then I can suggest that for you to use YouTube. A lot of grammar videos are already on YouTube. The BBC Learning English website has also produced some wonderful videos. It doesn't always have to be a video either. You can also just give a web page that does explain the grammar. And you might want to film your own explanation, especially if you want to put it in Ukrainian. If you want to just say, oh, and in our language, we do it like this, but in English, they do it like this, and making that comparison. You can record yourself on your phone, send it off to your students, or put it on a shared document for everybody to access. And if you want to use subtitles, then I recommend this free resource here called Screencast-O-Matic. I use it myself, and I can put subtitles on my videos. Then I have my video forever. So it doesn't matter in years to come, I can always send out that grammar video and all my students can access that. So if you have the time to do it, it's really good, because then you can save that resource. Another piece of advice from me to you is to keep track of participation in your class. So this is an example of a class that was online with me. And I've simply done a tally chart whenever a student has answered a question. And I've done some extra notes as well. So I've tried to keep it as fair as possible. So as you can see, a lot of them have answered quite fairly the questions. Julia and Juan at the very beginning, they only answered 3 questions, but they also both gave me a fairly long answer of one of the questions. So I was like, well, okay, that's fair. I feel like they've had their fair turn today. Pepe, John and Chris, they ended up being the group leaders because they simply missed one question and the others had answered one question more. Then I keep that notebook. That notebook is for that class. And then I can see the evolution and the progression of my class, how they're participating and how they're doing. You can also add to this. You can add little notes next to them. And this is a great way to track assessment as well. Assessment on the go, I like to call it. So for example, Julia, when she gave an answer, actually used a piece of grammar quite well that she hadn't used before. So I can write a little note there. Well done, Julia's improving on her grammar, but is still terrible with adjectives, for example. You can make your little notes there. So keeping track of participation is a really lovely idea. Okay, let's go to the practicalities now of these digital course books. So the idea is you've got your digital course book and all your students themselves have the same version of this digital course book too. There are lots of benefits with digital course books. Absolutely everything is embedded. You don't have to go to another page to find the audio, to find the activity book, no, it's all there, okay? And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share the focus page in a second, and I'm going to show you this. You can bookmark your page so that you know where you finished off and where you need to begin on the next lesson, or you can bookmark a page, like I said. If you've made an aim and you go, okay, and we're going to be doing page 12, but I need to jump to page 16, you can also bookmark that page and jump there nice and cleanly. You can zoom in and out so that students are really clear where they are and what they have to do on their course book. And it does come in with a built-in whiteboard. But of course, if it's on your version, only you can access and draw on this whiteboard. And also you can annotate the course book. And I'm just going to stop sharing this screen. I'm going to quickly show you the focus book now so that you know what I mean. And it's a bit like this teaching. You're going to have moments where you're flitting between screens and changing your share. And it doesn't matter. Students are okay with patiently waiting for you as you do it, as you are with me. So here we go. Here's a page of focus, right? As I say, you can be clicking on something and it nicely zooms, okay? You can save and exit. You can go from here to the next activity. You can go back to where you were on the go vocabulary, okay, on the go grammar. We can go to our next page. Lovely. Look, here's a video that's been embedded. We can click on that. We can zoom in, we can zoom out. There's lots of things we can do. I love it. And again, this is this annotation tool here that I absolutely love. You can get your pen, you can change the color, you can change how thick it is, and you can be blanking things out if you want students to guess. You can be highlighting things for them to see. You can also use what I love as well, like the hide. Okay, let's hide this. Can you guess what this animal might be behind here? You can use your hide tool as well. And you can also use your area tool so that you can cover it up and then start to reveal things. So it's nice if you've got a picture behind it and you've got to guess with your students, what's behind this? Can you tell? Can you guess? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that page now. I'm not going to go into all the different things you can do because I know that there are some lovely webinars coming up where you've got proper experts, not just me, telling you how best to use these tools. I'm just showing you right now, this is what it looks like. These are some basic things you can do, but please join the webinars that are coming up after me later on in the week where they really show you how to make the best of those digital course books. I'm more about how you can do things on top of the digital course book to keep your students engaged. So we've briefly looked at how the digital course book looks like and all the wonderful things that you can do and how it's just, everything is there. But I still maintain that you do need a collaborative document. If you're lucky enough to use Zoom, then Zoom comes with a built-in whiteboard. And with that whiteboard, all the participants are able to annotate and do things on it, which is lovely. So it means it's very collaborative. If you aren't working with Zoom, I have worked before with a document called whiteboard.fi. It's free, it's very good, but it's not the only one that you can use. And I'm going to show you now something called a Google Jamboard. I don't know if you've used Google Jamboard before, but I do. I like it. And I'm going to just share with you what it looks like and some of the things you can do on it, okay, to make your class as interactive as possible and so that the focus is on the students rather than yourself, okay? So again, I'm going to share my screen with you. Here we go. And we're back to the Pірсон book, and here's a Google Jamboard. Here we are. Okay. So Google Jamboard, I'll just quickly talk you through it. It's absolutely free if you have a Google account. You can also, your students can also access it if they don't have a Google account. They can still access and play on this document. All you have to do is to share the document, okay? And also what's really nice is you can download whatever you make as a PDF or as an image, and you can send that to your students after class so that they have a record of it. As you can see on the left, you've got a pen function, which is really nice. It means that if students click on the pen function, then they can start circling things, okay? You've also got the eraser function if they make a mistake. You've got your cursor, which is pointing at things. Now here is what you're looking at now, sticky notes. So this is where students can get very autonomous and they can make a sticky note. And here we've made lots of sticky notes as teams. So we've had two teams. We've had the blue team and the yellow team. We're all on the same document. We're all working together. I showed you earlier a screenshot of jobs, and our aim of the class was to look at the job vocabulary and to pronounce it very, very well. But I don't need to start with a digital course book. Our students' attention can be focused here in the warm-up, in the brainstorming, checking what they already know, especially if you've set that vocabulary for homework, can they remember it? So as the yellow team and the blue team, the students had to write down as many jobs as they could remember and put it on a sticky note. But of course, they had to spell it correctly. So they had to work together to spell it correctly. And they couldn't write the same job that another team had written. So if the blue team had written nurse, then the yellow team could not write nurse. It had to be different. My students at the time, they were in two groups, and I put them into two breakout rooms so that they could talk to each other and help each other with spelling, okay? If that's not a possibility, then students can also direct message each other and help them there. Or you can have the whole class talking, but it can get a bit chaotic. So you've got to be really careful, and they might give each other, the different teams, the different clues. So that was one of the things that we could do with our Google Jamboard, is making our sticky notes. And if we look at sticky notes, they're at different colors as well. So you can have up to 5 different teams there. Another thing you can do with this is asking the students to categorize, okay? For example, I don't give them any parameters. The only parameters I say is, I want you to categorize this vocabulary. And the only parameter is, there must be at least 3 things in a category. But it's up to students to then categorize it. For example, they could say, okay, police officer, nurse, and pilot are all jobs that are dangerous. Basketball player, footballer, and football manager are all really well-paid jobs. Okay, they can put more in there. That's a minimum of 3. They could put more in there if they wanted to. But it was up to the students to have that discussion and categorize that vocabulary themselves, helping them with their critical thinking skills. Now, you might think, okay, it's only one document. How can groups do this differently or come up with different answers? The thing is, you can make copies, okay? You can make copies of this document, and you can send the link to different groups, and they all work with a different copy. And then they, of course, can talk it through and share their ideas, share their screens, and talk through what they decided to do. Another idea with a Google Jamboard is it's very easy to import an image from Google or to copy and paste. So we play board games using Google Jamboard. So here is a board game that I found online and practicing the present perfect. And here I've got little images that are the counters, okay? How do you do this? If you go to add an image, then it's going to help you here. You can search for those images. So if students particularly want to be a camel or a cat icon, then I can just select my cat and insert it into the document. Here it comes. And then I can adjust the size of that. And then it automatically becomes their lovely playing piece. Okay, and this is just me sharing a screen here. And if students are also accessing this, then they can move their counter for me. I don't need to touch this. The only thing we do need is another tab with digital dice, or if you happen to have dice and you can throw it and show fairly on the camera what the dice are, then students can move. Another idea we can do is to practice question forms. So I've prepared on different sticky notes a question, and students have to figure out what is the right order. Here in this case, what do you think will happen next? And then students individually, this was based on a video that we were watching, and we paused it, and then this question was asked. And then students individually with their sticky notes said what they thought was going to happen next in the video. And then we carried on watching the video. So it's a nice way to get students to see other people's answers and they're not talking over each other, and they're practicing their grammar skills. Another thing we can do, Pictionary. Of course, I love a good game of Pictionary. So if we are doing the job vocabulary, here we go. We're getting our pen, we are choosing our colors and the type of pen we're going to use, and we're drawing. So what I did was I private messaged a student a vocabulary word, and then they had to draw it. Alternatively, a student can be autonomous and choose the word that they want to do and draw, and students are guessing. But be wary though, sometimes when students do guessing games, they might shout out and spoil a lot. My big tip here is students shout out their name rather than the thing that they're trying to guess, okay? So the first person says their name, Michael, for example, and you say, okay, Michael, what do you think it is? And then you can confirm or deny, rather than shouting out lots of different answers there. So it's nice and clear. So you can use a Pictionary. And of course, lovely vocabulary review here where we play noughts and crosses. For example, this is our vocabulary you want to review, and students have to use these words in a sentence, and a grammatically correct sentence. And if they manage to do that, then they win the square. The students who win the first line of 3, for example, here, win the game. It could have been diagonal here, but the blue team blocked them. So you know how to play noughts and crosses. So that's another thing you can do. Finally, you can also take advantage of pictures. If you want to review vocabulary, prepositions, you can ask your students, for example, circle the earphones. And they go, oh, where are the earphones? Where are they? Oh, there they are. There's the earphones. And they have to go find the earphones for you. So Google Jamboard is very useful. But it's not the only thing you could use. It could just be a Google Doc. It could be your Zoom whiteboard, but you do need a collaborative document wherever you can. Now I'm going to share my screen with you again now. Okay, so I am a fan of getting creative, getting heads up. Even though we're teaching digitally, it doesn't mean that we always have to do things from the course book. We can still, as creative people, add magic to our classes by doing lots of these fun activities that we've already seen on Google Jamboard and other things as well. So for me, I like to use the chat box as creatively as I can. Okay, so how can we do that? One could be guess the word I'm spelling. So as a lead into that job vocabulary unit, for example, I can use my chat box and I can start to type a job, and my students have to type back what job they think I'm typing. I'll do it with you now because the only way we can communicate with each other today is through our chat box. So I'm going to start typing a job to you guys. And if you want to, try and guess what job I'm typing. So the first letter is A, begins with A. So I'm going to let a few of you try to guess a few beginning with A. Okay, it's jobs vocabulary. So actor, accountant, artist, very good one so far. Oh, okay, well, nobody's got it so far. Architect, good. Well, the next one is AC, astronaut, very nice. Accountant, no. Actor, no. Remember, you're very good speakers of English. I'm not going to give you an easy one. ACU is the next one. Ambassador, that was a good one, but no. Assistant, ACU, what is it? No, ACUP. What begins with ACUP? Yes, well done, acupuncturist. Well done. Terrific. So of course I deliberately chose a difficult one for you because you are very good speakers of English and English teachers. So well done. And it encouraged students to type well, to focus on what you're doing and what you're saying. But of course the idea is they type it to you, they don't say it to you, but you can adapt it if they want to. Another thing I like to do is who said it. If you take advantage of the Zoom chat box, you know that you can either send a message to everyone or you can send a direct message to someone that only gets seen by that person. So I'll very often ask a question to my students and I'll say to them, please just send your message back to me. Then, for example, the question could be, what's your favorite thing to eat? Okay, what's your favorite food? And if they send the answer back to me, we can play a guessing game. And I can say, okay, class, somebody said chocolate cake. Who do you think said chocolate cake? And you can say, well, I always see Maria eating a chocolate bar. So I think it might be Maria that has the chocolate cake. And then Maria can confirm or deny if that was her that sent it. And it's a nice way to get to know your students in a class as well, especially if you're not able to be there face-to-face with them. You're still getting to know them, their likes and their interests. These kind of questions can be based on pretty much any topic you find in a course book. Direct messages also work super well to help your students to just interact with their partner. Maybe they need to discuss an answer to a quiz or to prepare something before they speak. For example, the noughts and crosses game where they have to give me a grammatically correct sentence. If you're not able to be in a breakout room, and students are not able to work with those words before and discuss it, they can always direct message each other and say, well, I think we should say this. What do you think? And then they can say the sentence when they're ready. In Zoom, if you go to the settings before classes begin, so it's in your general settings on your account, there's a box you can tick that says download the script, the chat box script, and it will do that for every class that you have. If you enable that after the class, if you have the time, you can look back at the chat box and see maybe spelling problems that you might need to do as a fun spelling test the next class. You might see a particular phrase that wasn't quite right, and therefore you can prepare a document at the beginning of class next time as you're waiting for all the students to attend and drop in on the hour. Sometimes they're a bit late. They can be looking at these sentences and going, oh, that's wrong. How was that wrong? How can we correct it? And it's a nice error correction activity. Another fun game you can do, again, using the direct messages, is direct message students a vocabulary word, and then you can play a variety of games with that. Students can either describe it and they have to guess. They could draw it if they've got a collaborative document. They can mime it if it's just with camera, and the class has to obviously guess what that student is trying to convey. If your students are particularly good, it doesn't have to be just a word in isolation. It could be a phrase, a short phrase, and students actually have to get the grammar correct of the phrase as well. And that's ever so good, and I do like playing that, but it is a little bit more tricky. Another way to get our students engaged and ready for class and wanting to learn and being connected to the topic is, one is the What's the Connection game that we just saw in Google Jamboard, where we had to organize the jobs in a particular connection and then let students be autonomous and come up with their own connections and ideas and thinking how the world works. Maybe we can play some music or a noise that might be relevant to the topic, getting students excited and talking and speculating about that. And also, you know, do, if you can, use things that are around you in your environment. If you want to, you can have a realia in a bag or next to you even, and you say, I have this object. Can you guess what it is? But you have to ask me questions. And through the questions, we're going to find out what it is. And the students can ask you questions like, okay, how big is it? Is it bigger than an egg? Is it smaller than a strawberry? What does it smell like? Does it have any corners? Is it round? And again, questions in English are really hard. So getting the questions out is a really nice idea. Again, you don't need your course book for this. This is just you being creative. Another way is, this is a website from YouTube. If you happen to have YouTube, this is called Guess the Picture. And there's lots of different episodes. And what it does is it zooms in on an item, really, really magnified, and then slowly comes out and reveals it. And students have to use, again, their speculation language to guess what it is. So we don't want our students to always say, oh, I think it's. Well, yeah, they can if they want to, but I reckon it's, maybe it's, it could be, maybe, all that extra language that students need to demonstrate later on in exams, we can be practicing it here. So this is a fun little warmer game you can do as well, or a finishing game if you like with your classes. Okay, now we obviously want to still have our students do lots and lots of speaking in class. If you're lucky enough to use Zoom, the breakout rooms are fantastic for this. Make sure the rules, though, with Teams, you do have to always restate your rules before going into the breakout rooms. You know, try to use English as much as possible, focus on the task, you only have 5 minutes, and so on and so forth. And this is great. If you go into breakout rooms, they can do investigation projects. So they can be on their own device, on a different web page, that's okay, finding information out, but they can obviously still hear their partner and still be chatting with them as if they're next to each other trying to do a web quest. They can be working and doing speaking in pairs. They can do teamwork, okay? Also, it's a space for them to just privately maybe speak about something. You know, it might be that they might want to do a collaborative idea about writing, but it's in a space that's less chaotic than the main classroom. Also, if I am assessing my students, they sometimes might get nervous at the word assessment, and I say, it's okay, don't worry, just pop into a breakout room with a friend, do the task, you know, practice it with your friend, and then I'll pop in and we'll do the task together and I'll listen to you, okay? So again, it's making them feel less nervous about the word assessment or test, okay? Another speaking idea, when you're all together in the main session and you don't want students necessarily to speak over one another, and this helps you with your tally chart that I was showing you earlier, is you can nominate and speak. For example, if I ask Julia, do you know the answer to this question? And Julia then answers the question. The next time a speaking or a commentary comes up, Julia nominates, not me. The power goes to Julia. So Julia then nominates John. John will answer, and then John will nominate Michael, okay? You still need your tally chart because it might be that Julia, John, and Michael are best friends, and so they always nominate each other. And you need to make sure everybody's included. But it gives the power to the students. Another thing to do is to help promote active listening. It's tricky, but once students get the hang of it, they quite like it. It's called Say 5 Words, Then Your Partner Takes Over. So if they're answering a question, okay, let's say it's John and Julia again, they're working together, and I ask a question or they're trying to answer. Julia can only say 5 words of the answer, and then her partner must take over and say the next 5 words. So for example, I think the man is, and then it's just John, is going to talk to his Julia mum about the shopping. Very good. So they're kind of listening and sharing, and it becomes kind of fun, and they're not, the onus isn't always on them. Yeah, they're only going to do 5 words, and it becomes quite fun. And they start to notice the grammar functioning as well. And I've seen some creative students who always try to make their answers as long as possible to always send it back to their partner. And then that's nice because students are playing with grammar, playing with vocabulary, and they don't think it's a chore, they think it's a game. And then finally, I love words of the day. So the very beginning, my first slide I put is, because I also sometimes use PowerPoint or I use a whiteboard, depends on how I'm feeling. But I'll put 3 or 4 phrases that came up in a previous class. So your chat box sometimes can help with that. And I'll say, okay, guys, here are the words of the day. Okay, and we've just been looking at body idioms here. So it's on the tip of my tongue, I'll lend a hand and so on. I'll say, okay, here are the words of the day. If you can use one of these words of the day successfully, then I have a special bell that I ring. I go ding, 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 ding. Well, I'll ring my bell for you and we'll all clap you and we'll all think you're wonderful. Okay. So again, it's trying to get students to recycle what they're doing. And I mentioned earlier that the active, the online digital book has this pen tool. And sometimes I like my students to guess and talk and speculate what a missing word might be in a text. Now, I know I said earlier with flipped learning that we could do readings not in class. We should be doing more dynamic things. But this isn't a reading task. This is actually introducing vocabulary. It's a little reading that introduces vocabulary. So for me, this is okay to use in class. The bigger, longer readings, they can definitely do by themselves in their own free time. Okay, so here the students, I've colored in some words and the students have to try and speculate what's the missing word. And again, it gets them into the topic that we're talking about. And in this case, it's family members. Other interaction possibilities. So you might not want your students all the time to say something to you to show that they understand. There are other ways they can. Obviously, thumbs up and thumbs down. If you've got closed questions where they have to say yes or no, then that's very easy for the students to show it to the camera, or even a I don't know thumb in the middle. It can also be used to check instructions. Okay, you know, are you working with one person? Yes, I am. Are you going to talk in English? Yes, I am. Okay. Stand up, sit down, I love. I often do this for when my students are doing true or false questions or yes or no questions. If the answer is true, then they show it by standing up. And if the answer is false, then they stay sitting down. You've got the typical nod your head, shake your head as well. And, you know, old-fashioned, we can still have students' answers written down on a piece of paper and held up to a camera. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So if you don't have a whiteboard that you can share, you can still have your students participating in a quiz or showing understanding or drawing a picture, holding it up to the camera, and we can all still participate. Now I'm going to move on to the idea of assessing, okay? I know that assessment is hard when it's online, and obviously with what's happening right now, you might feel that you don't want to assess your students, that there's enough going on in life and we don't want to do this. But if you are going to assess your students, either because the school requires it, the parents require it, or the government, or even just to help your students to see how they're doing, here are some ways that you can do assessment, okay? Now, the active books all contain activities where students can grade themselves, okay? So they can do gap fills, and it tells them if they've done it correctly, if they haven't done it correctly, they've got drag and drop things, and it assesses them. And then it gives them the result at the bottom. So here, when I did this, I made one mistake, so I did 80% here. And then at the end of this unit, this is 6.1, these are all the activities students can do. They can do it by themselves, no problem, or they could be doing it in class, no problem. But it does give a nice report at the end, how they did. Now, you might think to yourself, okay, in an activity, a student could get something wrong and then go back, reset it, do it all again and get 100%. And then I'd never know if the student got 100%. Well, you do actually. If you look here, in the first column, it says checks. So for exercise 4, I got it 100% and I didn't need to check my answers. But exercise 6, I did 2 checks, and you can see I made 1 mistake when I did it. So even though I've got my medal, it tells the teacher, okay, they didn't get it quite right the first time, but then they went back, revised it, and then they got it right, okay? And it also tells you where a student might not have understood very well. This is at 14%, exercise 7, exercise 9 is only 50%. So it gives you a lot of information for you to maybe go over some other things later on in class. Students are doing this in their own copy of the digital course book, so you can always ask them to send you a screenshot and show you how well they're doing, okay? Another thing is writing. In the digital course book, it's great because it gives the students one place and one place only to write their writing down. I've been there in face-to-face classes where students have shoved bits of paper in their bag forever to be lost, and you'll never see that writing again. And there are some students who have problems focusing on being tidy and tidying up things. And that's okay, that's life. But here in the digital course book, right here, they can be typing in an answer. And if you like, students can send a screenshot to you so that you can read what they've put. They can also highlight, copy, paste, and put it in a Google Doc for you. If you put it in a Google Doc, that's lovely because you can annotate it and you can give corrections. You could also turn it into a whole class activity where we copy and paste and read all our different pieces of work and help our friends out with doing that. But you can also use a Padlet to do that. I'll just stop sharing my screen for a second because I'm going to introduce you now to a Padlet. I do love a good Padlet. Here we go. A Padlet, if you haven't used it, looks like this. You can use it to some extent free. I think you can make up to 10 boards for free, and then if you make any more, you have to start paying. Okay, so you have to use it sparingly. This is what a Padlet looks like. I use it a lot with my Pірсон live classes. Students can make a new post, for example, here, they make a post, and that's where here the subject, at the moment I've just put my name so that we know who I am, okay, and then write something fantastic. That's where they can either directly write it here or copy and paste what they've written from their digital course books. And as you can see, you can decorate it as well. You can upload a photo, you can add a link, but also I've got some students who have audio recorded, which is lovely. It's a great place for you to also hear students as well. When you make a new post, for example, here, sorry, I'm just moving something so I can see it. If you go to the 3 dots, you can do video recorder. You can also do audio recording. So Padlet is another collaborative document that you can use, okay? But now I'm not the expert, but Pírson also gives you the opportunity to create groups and give assignments and tests. So if you see here where you've got your list of books, you can make your group, make your class, set them tests and assignments and see how they're getting on. But there's going to be an expert in that telling you about it in another webinar later on. But that's also another option that's very, very, very good. Okay, now back to my webinar. There we go. So writing is often something that is forgotten about, but as I say, you can set it for homework and your students can send it to you. If you do something on a Google shared document as well, it's nice because it does keep previous versions. So if you do need to go back and check what mistakes your students made, you can. It has a history. Now to assess speaking. Okay, so as I said before, use your interaction tally as well to make little notes about your students. What are they doing well? What do they need to improve? What are you noticing about them? Okay, if you are going to do an official speaking assessment, bless them, do warn them that you're going to do that. Next class, guys, I have to assess you for my records. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you what it's all about and we're going to do a little assessment. Okay, I do advise breakout rooms so that it's private. If that's not an option, then you're just going to have to ask your students to unplug their earphones for a bit, or, you know, have a schedule. Okay, so, you know, I'm going to have Susanna coming in at 4 o'clock to do the assessment, and then she goes off, but then she does her online homework by herself, for example. So you could do a schedule if you want it to be more private. Okay, so students should be doing other tasks while they wait their turn. I am a fan of getting students to practice something before they speak. So here, this is a screenshot from Focus 3 Active Book Unit 1. It's very sort of exam based, where they have to look at a photo, talk about it, speculate about it, and then they get some questions. So I could either do the whole thing with them, or as a teacher, I might get them to do number 6 together in a pair just to warm up. And then I'll come in and I'll do activity 7 with them, and that will be the assessment, for example. Okay, so you can choose either way. You don't have to assess everything in a speaking unit. You can just choose one little aspect there. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick slide now about hybrid, just in case any of you are still doing a hybrid situation. Okay, these are my top tips for hybrid teaching. Choose the very best spot in your class to be seen by all, online and face-to-face. Put an X on that floor, mark it. That is where you're going to stand for most of the class, and it's always the place you're going to give instructions from. Okay, you don't have to work sweaty, running around to your keyboard, computer, back to the class, back to your keyboard. You can have a student, a very responsible student, coming and changing your slide for you, opening the digital book for you. You can have that student doing that for you. You don't have to be the one that's always in control. Okay, students like helping out the teacher. Again, you can have your student, they're also moving cameras for you as well if you're doing hybrid. And use your microphone to your advantage. You know, there might be times in which you need to mute the online lot. There might be times when you want to unplug the microphone so the online class can't hear what the physical class is doing, especially if they're playing a game or having a discussion. Okay, if you don't have a breakout room, you might want the online students to have a discussion, but you don't want the physical students to be distracted and hear that because they're having their own discussion. So just, you can unplug your microphone, you can mute your microphone. Okay, so that's top tips for hybrid, but I think most of you are online at the moment, so I'm going to quickly move on. Good teaching isn't about using lots of websites. Good teaching, as we've discussed, is about setting a very good aim and using those activities to build towards it, making sure you're as interactive as possible with your students. But if you do want to experiment with some other websites, here are some ones that I recommend. Don't use them all at once. What we're not looking for is, okay, we start with a digital course book, then we're on a Jamboard, then we're on a Padlet, then we're on a Flipgrid. No, we should be using max one thing in our classes, okay? And the good minimum is your digital course book and your collaborative document. That's it, okay? And if you want to add one more element because you want to excite your class for the day, go ahead, try these out, but take your time with it. For example, if you want to try Padlet, only try Padlet. Don't use the rest. Just go, oh, I'm going to learn about Padlet. Let's see what we can do and use Padlet for a month. Okay. And then later choose something else. Don't get very excited all at once. Okay. Because it becomes a chaotic class. Padlet, we've already seen. It's a place where you post things. You can video record and audio record. Flipgrid is similar to Padlet, but you record yourself giving a question, and then your class record themselves back with an answer, and they can all see what they've all recorded. And it's really, really sweet, really nice. Actively Learn is a website that allows you to set questions for texts that are online. So you might have a BBC News article and you want to turn it into something more classroom based. Then you can start adding in your questions. Okay. Quizlet is like flashcards. So if you want, you can put new vocabulary on, and then you can flip over the card and it tells you the meaning, or it can tell you the word in their native language. You can also do gap fills. So you have a sentence with a gap missing, and you click on it, you flip it over, and the students see what the missing word is. You can also play games, some games with that in Quizlet. Storybird, that's more for the primary students, but check it out. Stories are always a really good resource as well. So therefore, in conclusion, I think, yes, I'm only a couple of minutes over time. So here we go. In conclusion, we have looked at the benefits of using digital course books. They are useful. Don't get stressed with them. If tech goes wrong, tech goes wrong. You've got other things that you can be doing, other things you can set your students, and your students probably can access their digital course book. So just say, okay, unit 1, activity 5, off you go, while you go and fix your things. So don't worry. Things can go wrong, but there's a lot of benefits with digital course books. But a good lesson, as I always say, is about solid aims. So don't get overwhelmed that it might be digital. Doesn't matter. The fundamentals of teaching remain the same, and you are good teachers and you know how to do that. Okay, so just be nice and calm and work on your aims. Unfortunately, I didn't cut down my talk time because this is a webinar, but you should think about cutting down your talk time and letting your students talk as much as possible. They can read out instructions. They can tell you what they want to do. Don't be afraid to do the flipped learning, setting the grammar videos, do the reading outside of class. And do think about using your technology sparingly, okay? But the essential is a collaborative document somewhere. And my biggest tip is always try to look for the fun in every activity that you do. I want to thank you so very much for giving up your time to be with me today. It's been a pleasure to have you all with me, and good luck with your digital teaching to come throughout the year. And as we've said at the beginning, and we'll say it again, Pірсон and everybody here stands with Ukraine. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for participation. If you have any questions, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Liz. As we said, this was very, very practical. I hope you all enjoyed it and you will take away a few ideas from here. We are having another meeting on Thursday. Details, as Aliona said, on our website and our Facebook page. So those of you who haven't registered yet, you can join us on Thursday as well. Thank you, Liz. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for joining, and stay safe and be well. Hope to see you on our next meetings and sessions. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye to all.